Hello and welcome to the Press Pass here on Back of the Net, and a chance for us to catch up with some local journalists who work in and around the mighty AFC Bournemouth. So this weekend then, we've got a South Coast derby against Southampton in the FA Cup, and for today's show we're chatting to a couple of media personnel who, on their respective platforms, they cover not only the Cherries but also the Saints. So the big questions are, is it a rivalry? What's it like to cover clubs with the same amount of neutrality? What problems do they have having to cover more than one team? And what has been their experience of the interesting dynamic of football on the South Coast in recent years? Well, it's a hotly anticipated FA Cup quarter-final, and we are shortly going to find out. So later on, we're going to be chatting to Dan Rose, who's a journalist from the Daily Echo, who he covers the Cherries, but also the Saints. But first, before that, a man whose dulcet tones will be recognised by many a Saints fan, but also, not least, us Cherries too, with probably one of his famous commentaries being the one that oversaw us winning the championship at the Valley. It is BBC Radio Solent's Adam Blackmore.
Hi Sam, how are you?
Doing very well, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm glad you reminded me about that championship game, because that was quite some afternoon at the Valley. I'll never forget that, being on the pitch with the players afterwards, interviewing them, celebrating almost with them. One of the joys of the job, to be honest, moments like that.
And that commentary provided one of those spine-tingling moments where you hear the fans reacting to something that you're not quite sure of yourself, when Sheffield Wednesday equalised and then the final whistle. What was that like for you?
Cool. I think the thing is, when you're live on air, you can't really. It's not like Match of the Day where you can do it again, ready for the recording later. You have to get it right. So you just hope you get it right and people like it. And the only way you can make sure you're going to get it right is by doing all your prep and hoping for the best, really, and just trying to be on song when you need it most. So, I'm always flattered when people say things about commentaries that they remember, because then you're doing your job. And actually, part of being in regional local radio, I think, is that you actually get closer to your audience than you do on network radio, for example. And it matters. So if it matters to people, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I certainly remember it very well. So first things first then, a huge match this weekend, and I think we are in agreement that it's a derby. By dictionary definition, that's what it is. But it's the whole rivalry thing that's up for debate. It's not a rivalry, is it?
I actually think it's as much, or if not more, a rivalry these days than a derby, given that, the derby itself has only become regular in the last 5 seasons. I think that, that means to me the rivalry's grown, because I don't think I hear as much little old Bournemouth stuff as I used to a few years ago. And of course, winning at St Mary's recently, I thought upped the rivalry even more. So I think there's more rivalry than there was certainly a decade ago when they met in League One. So I think the rivalry's built up nicely. Because fans of Southampton don't want to call it a derby because of the Pompey game, let's call it a rivalry.
So how did the intensity compare? Because it was only a few days between us travelling up to St Mary's, beating them 3-1, and then of course Saints had Portsmouth in the Carabao Cup. So could you sense that there was a difference in intensity, or was it fairly similar?
No, there is a difference in the atmosphere. There's no doubt about it. I don't think there's any malice or ill will in the Bournemouth-Southampton game, but I think there is lots more of that in the Pompey Saints game. I think it matters more to individual people who support either side.
Yeah. So of course you support. Working on Radio Solent, you cover Bournemouth, Portsmouth, Saints, plus non-League 2.
Yeah.
And with that comes the responsibility of ensuring that you cover each team with the right amount of coverage. How do you sort of determine how much airtime you give to each team? Because it must be difficult.
I think the trouble is, well, there's no trouble. The point is, fans of individual clubs will always think they warrant more than other clubs. But what I'm guided by is obviously the editorial. So For example, if Portsmouth have a new manager like they do on Saturday, if this wasn't a 12-15 cup tie in the FA Cup first, you're going to give more time to Pompey's story because it's a bigger story than you're going to if you're just previewing the other matches and nothing major's happening. So I think people have to remember sometimes, the story is bigger than the size of the clubs in relative terms, and I'm not trying to look at it as let's make sure we give exactly 18 minutes to each club. We generally will try and even it out and bounce from club to club. The adage we sort of try and go by is never be too far away from the next club. So if you're talking about one team, spend some time on it that it warrants, talk about the next team, and then the next team. So you're never that far away from us talking about the Cherries. If there's, say, an hour from 2 till 3 on a Saturday and all three of them are playing. When it comes to what order we're talking about them, general rule of thumb would be what league they're in. But again, could you really put Pompey at the bottom of that argument if Danny Cowley's just been announced, like, say, this weekend, and he's going to have his first game in charge? That's your biggest story, isn't it? So I think it's about editorial judgment, but actually, if it's a run-of-the-mill weekend or midweek night, trying to balance and bounce between the clubs.
For many seasons in the Premier League, I often saw on Twitter the annoyance from Bournemouth fans when Saints would be read just before us, even though there's only 2 league positions between us and things like that. It's the minutiae of football. I think that's probably down to Bournemouth's. We've always been the little brother of Southampton over the years, and I think that's possibly the reason why. But of course, this weekend on BBC Radio Solent, you're going to be covering both Bournemouth and Saints, but from different perspectives. How does it compare to a normal production on a Saturday afternoon?
Well, I mean, in some ways, it's easier for me and Chris because we both know the other clubs so well. So preparation time on the opposition and the club's recent history and so on is obviously far fresher in our minds when it comes to recall. So that helps. Obviously, because we're then doing 2 commentaries, Chris can just focus on Bournemouth in the lead up to it, and I can just focus on Southampton, and the same with our summarisers. So it's actually more fun because you're sort of yin and yanging and bouncing between all of you a bit more. And actually, in a way, it takes the pressure off, but it makes no difference to me. And funny you said about who I support earlier and almost said support. Chris historically is a Gillingham fan. I'm a Villa fan. My whole family are Villa fans. Southampton fans know that. I've commentated on Pompey, Saints and Cherries. And what people don't quite get, I think, sometimes, Sam, is that we have a job to do, and part of my job as sports editor is to be the Southampton commentator. Now, what happens over time is that you build up relationships with the people you work with, like Chris has at the Cherries. And so, of course, they're your clubs as well. You want them to win. I want Cherries, Pompey and Saints to win every week. When they're playing each other, I've got a duty of care to the people listening on my side of the fence. And it's not like I'm doing that and they can't get anything else. The Cherries fans can get Chris. So it's even anyway. But obviously, I have a focus on the pros and cons of what Southampton are doing. And that's my job.
So there'll be 2 separate commentaries at the weekend, and shortly we'll ask you for all the details on that. But I've got to say, this is probably before your time, Adam. But I remember this trial that BBC Radio Solent did for a while. It was back in the 90s. I think Grant Coleman was probably sports editor at the time, and they had this unique idea. It didn't work very long, whereby there were 2 commentators. And one of them would commentate when one team has the ball, and then the other would commentate when the other has the ball. So you've got an idea of who's in control. So it wouldn't necessarily be a Bournemouth Southampton game. It could be, Bournemouth v Rochdale, but you could sense who was on the ball by who was speaking. Not an idea that you've thought of picking up again, no?
No, to be honest with you, if you don't know who's got the ball, I'm not doing my job, am I? You have to remember, one of the things I criticise people for in radio is, and certainly critique people on, is do I know where the ball is? What's the score? Where's the ball? Who's got the ball? Those are the 3 most important things you want to know as a fan. And the where the ball is the most interesting. And that's where I think a lot of commentators slip up. Sometimes I think I'm saying too much. But when I first started commentating regularly, Sam, in the late 90s, I was working with Northampton Town, and the chairman's son was at Worcester Blind College, and I live near Worcester. So I used to pick him up to games and then take him to the matches, and he'd sit next to me. And one of the things I learned from him and was made so aware of was that really, radio's a blind medium, and he needs to know where the ball is, and which way the teams are playing, and how far up the pitch the ball is. So that taught me a great lesson as a young commentator starting out, to not be shy of describing things.
Yeah, we spoke to Tony Pulis recently, had an interview with him, and at the end of the interview, he spoke about his complete admiration for radio commentators, and he did a brief stint with 5 Live, Alistair Bruce Ball, and he absolutely loves the medium, and he says you do such a good job, and you have to do a good job because, you have to fill the gaps. People can't see it, and you have to describe what's going on. But I think you and Chris especially do a fantastic job. Jordan, when he stands in as well, does a brilliant job too. And at Dean Court on Saturday, it would be brilliant to have the tapestry of a derby with the fans in the background, but it's not going to be there. Obviously, do you think the nature of the whole derby thing is going to be lost because of the empty stadium?
I think in derbies more than in other games, you feel it more. Like I said, the electricity at Fratton Park when Saints played there in the League Cup, you're not going to have that, however much you want to create it yourself. And we would all tell you that when we're commentating without crowds, we've had to adjust in a way and sort of force our levels, because usually we have to talk above the crowd noise. You sort of have to find your own pitch to make sure, am I being excited enough here? Am I giving it enough? Because, you haven't got that natural backdrop to get over. And I certainly think in derbies, you miss that. But, because we know the occasion is so big this weekend, and it does mean a lot to both sets of fans, both the town and the city. There's an FA Cup place at Wembley at stake. It's hardly two clubs, with a massive, great history of success in the FA Cup, is it? So it's a big occasion, and I think that carries us anyway. We know this is a big deal, and I don't think anybody should play this cup tie down, because I think that would be disrespectful to the players, how they'll put into it, and of course the competition, which we all love.
Absolutely. So I won't trouble you for a prediction on this one, but can you maybe give us a brief insight into your thoughts of both teams' seasons up to this point? Because it's not been the best. Well, for Bournemouth, it doesn't seem to be, but maybe we're picking up at the right time.
It's interesting. I mean, if I look at all 3 of our league clubs, and it's all been slightly underwhelming in the last few months, hasn't it? I thought Tuesday's win over Swansea was really important to bounce back from the Barnsley game. And I like the sort of gritty determination that comes across in Jonathan Woodgate's interviews. He's very focused. I think, when he keeps saying we didn't match them, I like he's got an edge to him. And I think he's starting to bring that edge to the team. And for me, that's something that they've lacked. I think he wants an intensity that hasn't always been there this season. But let's be honest, if you go back to before Christmas, we all thought the minimum we were aiming at for Bournemouth as well as Portsmouth was the playoffs. And things have changed. And the other thing I keep saying on the radio is I think it's really hard to judge players and managers in this season because it's so weird, because we don't know how individuals are dealing themselves, especially the players with being in bubbles and lockdown. And, we're all affected by it in one way or the other. Well, so are they. And I think we forget that and we affect these high levels all the time. So I think it's tough to judge anybody. But I like the way Jonathan Woodgate's gone into the job. I like the way the players responded initially. Remember, the cup win at Burnley was terrific, So he's had his good start, great start. Then it dipped a little bit recently. But to come back with that win over Swansea was massive. And, I spoke to Ralph Hasenhüttl today, and he said he still sees Bournemouth as a Premier League club because of the players you've got at the club. As in, don't think there's going to be a massive gap between these teams, because there isn't, is there? So, yes, other teams have had more consistency than the Cherries, but I still think they're right in there if they can finish strongly for at least a place in the why not still chase fourth, third if you can? Other teams might slip up. You've just got to keep being relentless. And like I said, Southampton's season has fallen off a cliff since they beat Liverpool, oddly enough, at the start of the year. And they're still looking for that pick-me-up, really. They had the win at Sheffield United, but then went backwards against Brighton. So, you could actually say the Cherries will be feeling better about life than Saints going into this game. And I think that's a fair comment.
I'm really excited about it. So how can people take in the coverage this weekend, Adam?
Well, what we do, and things have changed over recent years because our transmitters and our frequencies aren't quite as independent of each other as they used to be. But it's nice and simplified in some ways. It doesn't always suit the way we split. People always forget we're really privileged to be able to split our frequencies and commentaries like we do. Most radio stations can't do it. And when people moan, I always think, blimey, you want to try being BBC Manchester when you've got one frequency, or BBC Birmingham, you can hardly cover all the games. They're all tucked away online. But look, it's all Dorset frequencies for our Solent commentary. And of course, because it's the FA Cup, Sam, you can get it online as well. So Cherries on all our Dorset, digital radio in Dorset, I always think is the best way to listen to the Cherries. But because it's the FA Cup, you can get hold of it online as well as the FM frequency. Saints will be on Hampshire, but then Southampton fans are going to have to put up with losing some of their frequencies when Pompey get underway at 1 o'clock. So the way the fixtures are going, it's making it a logistical nightmare, to be honest. But like I said, we're lucky to be able to do that, split between different games across the south.
Well, Adam, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. And I certainly hope you enjoy the game tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. Thanks for having me on, Sam. Nice to speak to you.
So that's the Audible Media covered there. Great to chat to Adam there. And I've got to say, Solent Sport, they do an excellent job in covering not only AFC Bournemouth, but all the South Coast teams. They put in a right old shift. I've listened to many phone-in specials they've done, and goodness knows how many they did over the past year with AFC Bournemouth, with all that was going on. But of course, Pompey, with Kenny Jackett going, new managerial appointments, etc. They've been on the ball. What about the written media, though? Well, one publication in particular covers AFC Bournemouth better than anyone else, and that's the Bournemouth Echo. Now, Dan Rose is a journalist that he covers everything when it comes to the Cherries, both on and off the pitch. And, given Boscombe's tumultuous stories over the past decade, well, there's been a lot to cover. But with Dan also now covering the Saints too, his involvement with the South Sporting heavyweights is now shared. So what does he make of the really strange football dynamic on the South Coast?
It's obviously a challenge that we have to embrace at the Echo, really. I think it's first of all, you've got to be sort of honest and sort of have that clarity, really, where it is obviously myself, Tom Crocker, we are the Echo Sports Desk. There are two of us to cover the two clubs in the top two tiers in English football, really, with Cherries and Saints. So, yeah, challenges is the word. Mainly, a lot of it obviously comes down to sort of the mileage that we have to do. And I know obviously a lot of fans are sat at home at the minute waiting for the chance to get back into grounds and stuff like that. So we can't really take that for granted. We are very lucky to do the job we do. But, you only have to look back a couple of weeks ago, really. I was doing Saints at Sheffield United while Tom was up doing Cherries at Preston. So it's a lot of miles to cover for two people and everything like that. You kind of look around the press box sometimes and there's a lot of people there that obviously have stuff to send back to the desk and a lot of staff and stuff like that. We don't have that. We are, the local paper. That's the challenge that we embrace, really. We do our best to deliver the best local content for both fan bases and do everything we can to deliver the best coverage we can for the two obviously very big clubs around the South Coast area. So yeah, it's things to embrace, really, and working with both clubs. We are very lucky with regards to the media side on both clubs. Are very professional. They're very good outfits and they're fantastic with us with regards to manager access, player access and stuff like that, and allow us to ask the questions that we think fans want to know the answers to, really.
Yeah, absolutely superb. And I must say, I read yours and Tom's articles daily on the Daily Echo website, I have to say. So for this, though, tell me how it works, because obviously you've mentioned, Tom, who you work alongside. You're in the Bournemouth Echo, you're in the Southampton Echo. For this fixture, are you independently writing match reports for a slant on each team, or how does it work?
So I mean, obviously, although we work together as a two, there are two separate publications covering two separate teams. So what you would get, I mean, I gave the example a minute ago where one was at Sheffield United, one was at Preston. Normally, one would go and do a live blog of the game. We'll obviously do a run and match report on the whistle, which people obviously go and look at. And obviously then go and get the post-match reaction and everything like that. That won't change regarding this game. It's just a rare novelty that the two of us will be together rather than potentially at other ends of the country and stuff like that. So yeah, one of us will do the Cherries side of it for the Bournemouth Daily Echo. One of us will do the Saints side for the Southern Daily Echo. I believe the post-match will be on Zoom, so we'll both be on Zoom from the stands afterwards. So it'll be quite strange that we're actually both in the same presser together, which it's been a while since that's happened. And also with regards to players, I mean, with various COVID protocols and stuff like that, there isn't the sort of general thing that we used to have pre-COVID with the mix zone where the players walk through a separate area, potentially with away games to go to the bus and stuff like that. A lot of the time it's done over the phone or something like that, which is another bizarre scenario in itself with regards to COVID, because a lot of the time you find yourself speaking to a player who stood on the pitch over the phone, so you can see them and they can see you, but you're miles away. So I imagine one of us will do a Saints player, one of us will do the Cherries player over the phone, and we'll obviously sort of split it up that way and stuff like that. I'll be completely honest with you, Sam. Obviously, I've been away for a few days this week ahead of the game. I'm back for the game. We haven't decided who's doing which club yet. I know that's probably something that you were going to ask me and everything like that, but Tom and I are going to have a meeting beforehand to discuss how it's going to go, and if there's any extra things that we feel we should do for both online and print to cover the game. Because obviously it's massive. So we're gonna sit down, have a debrief have a brief beforehand, and then a debrief post match as to how we're going to cover it for both print and online, and get plans in place really.
So what's it going to be? A roll of the dice, a toss of a coin? How's it going to be decided?
I think it's just something that we'll have to just sit down and have a chat about, really. Obviously covering both clubs, and I think it's your duty as a local journalist, really, covering both clubs. As you have to be as neutral as you can and say it as it is, and do it as it is that way. So with regards to it, I mean, we'll just sit down and obviously make the decision at the time. And with regarding the clubs, I mean, there's no need for me to tell you, really. It's a massive game for both clubs. There's Wembley on the line. It's absolutely huge, and it's really, for us, it's kind of fate that the two have come out together, because it's the first season that we've been doing both clubs. Obviously, you can imagine the reaction between myself and Tom, sort of over WhatsApp or whatever, when the draw was made and everything, whilst frantically going around to get it online and get all the history online and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, toss the coin and bits and pieces like that. I mean, it's sort of stuff that we've joked about, really, but we'll sit down and have a chat and see how it all goes, really.
So you mentioned having to do various bits and pieces over Zoom, and I presume all the press conferences are still being done that way. How quickly did you get used to doing that when this whole COVID thing came in?
Well, I mean, it's bizarre, really. I mean, you say how quickly you have to get used to it. You have to get used to doing it. You know, that's the main thing. I mean, you would have known that more than anything, Sam, with the stuff that you guys do and everything like that. I'm sure, I mean, there's been the odd technical hiccup and bits and pieces with regards to Zoom and stuff. I must admit, I do find it very strange. I still find it strange now, rather than speaking to someone face to face. I still find it a bizarre process and stuff like that. There was a game last season where, like, you kind of have to pinch yourself somewhere. I mean, as a two-man desk, we try to get to as many games as we can. And luckily, with regards to Cherries, we've been at every game this year, and you know, it's been really good. But still, when you're sat up doing Zoom at the stands, you're praying on press Wi-Fi to make sure it's okay. You're praying for stuff like that as well. There was a game during Project Restart last season, I remember, when Cherries went to Man United, and I think it was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was on afterwards, and you've got to make sure that your living room's tidy. So when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer comes on, you've got to make sure that he's there and stuff like that. And the pre-match as well, you don't want anything in the background that, you know, that shouldn't be there or anything like that. And it's bizarre because I mean, like, you do see things like this, don't you? There's obviously the famous clip of when I think it was the guy on the BBC News when his kids walk in. So I'm making sure that, like, at the minute we've got a dog at home, so I'm making sure that the dog's not barking or making any noise while we're doing this and stuff. So it's it's bizarre. I never ever thought in my life that I'd have to make sure the house was tidy before I'd have to come on to interview a football manager. It is mad. But yeah, the actual dynamic of the interview, it's still so strange. Like it's still so strange in the way that I find it harder to gauge a reaction, if you see what I mean. And it's just bizarre. I mean, there's always 9 times out of 10 you're always thinking to yourself, oh my god, am I on mute when I shouldn't be on mute? Am I, should I now be speaking? Should I now have the camera on? It's a strange turn of events, but yeah, we've got to grips with it, and you had to get to grips with it quickly. We're quite lucky with regards to some things regarding post-match in the EFL with Cherries. That's normally face-to-face. That's handy. I think regarding the FA Cup game, regarding Saints, that will probably be via Zoom. Everything regarding the Premier League has still been via Zoom as well. So, I mean, it's the whole thing. I mean, and like I said, you would have known more than anything, Sam, to do all these things with regards to technology and stuff and Zoom and not being able to actually see someone face to face and have a conversation. It's difficult for everyone to get used to, but yeah, we've slowly got there. So
what's quite reassuring is when it's all sort of kicked in, it was great to see the behind the scenes photos from people like Kelly Summers was posting it on Instagram and Twitter. Chris Temple was, of laptops precariously balanced on cardboard boxes and cushions and stuff. That was quite reassuring to see. Like, as a tin pot operation like ourselves, it was actually really, really reassuring to see. Now, we can't not talk about the Echo website because, of course, these days all your publications are put on bournemouthecho.co.uk, but also on the Southampton Daily Echo website. And one of the juiciest sections is always the comment sections. Have to scroll down. Do you get a sense of the rivalry between Bournemouth and Southampton? Because it's quite unique, isn't it?
Unique is definitely the word I would use to describe it. And I think people have their views on the comment section. I think people will always look at the comment section and stuff regarding that. But as long as it doesn't go too far, and as long as it's not something that is, how do I say, well, abusive or anything like that goes too far and it is wrong to post, I think it's important that fans have the chance to have their say, especially like we were saying a minute ago with no fans at the grounds in a COVID environment at the minute. People want to give their views, and we want to hear their views and everything like that, as long as they're reasonable and kept clean and everything like that. I think that's absolutely fair. Obviously, with regards to our side of things, that's something we have to monitor. Regarding the rivalry, I mean, like you say, it's a unique rivalry. You asked the question beforehand, there's always the debate of, is it a derby, is it not a derby? I know when the draw came out, Ralph Hasenhüttl at Saints called it a derby match. People have their own views on it and stuff like that. I remember being at the game, when was it, October last season, when obviously Cherries got the victory there, being stood outside when it was the mix zone area. And I remember Steve Cook saying to me, I'm sure, Saints don't think it's a derby when they lose. And obviously that was this comment that obviously fanned a bit of the flames and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think people have their own views on it. I mean, what he also said to me that night, and I think obviously he's spoken before this game and everything like that as well, is the more the teams play each other, the more the rivalry will grow. And that is something I would definitely agree with. I think obviously Cherries getting the win there last season was obviously history for them at St Mary's. But then obviously, without meaning to bring it up on this platform, Saints came back and beat Cherries in what was a pivotal game last season. So if stuff like that doesn't grow a rivalry, I don't know what will. So that's kind of my take on it, really. I mean, I know Steve Cook came out afterwards, I think it was on 5 Live when the draw was made on that night, and said that, Cherries as a whole Saints won. So stuff like that, I think everyone will always have their opinions. I know I spoke to Jack Stacey a little while ago about it, and he said obviously he realised how much it meant when Cherries got a victory at Saints. So, I mean, with regards to the comment section and stuff, it's got to be kept reasonable. But two South Coast teams going for a place at Wembley. It's a big game, isn't it? You've got to add a bit of spice to it, haven't you? Do you know what I mean? So, and it's what people want to read about. It's what people want to know about. People want to know that views, and I think everyone has their own sort of debate as to whether it's a derby or not, have their own views, but it's certainly a game that I think both clubs are looking forward to. I know Ralph Hasenhüttl today said it's one of the most important games in their year, so I think that tells you what you need to know about it, really.
Wow, yeah, and it's good to know the players actually understand. So even without the fans there, they'll get hopefully, they know how important it is to us fans watching at home. And I think there are some weird similarities between the two clubs, despite being in different divisions this year, because I get the impression that Saints, well, they're certainly not hitting the heights that the fans expect. They started off really well, just like we did, but then they've dropped off a cliff. I wouldn't say dropped off a cliff, but our form has dipped and it's been very temperamental, but we're showing some good signs, and especially that win against Swansea really helps. In terms of Southampton and Bournemouth, do you always feel as though there's more to give? Because they're talented squads, aren't they?
They are both talented squads, to be honest. More to give, I think that's fair to say, really. I mean, I kind of look back at it with two key moments in both sides' seasons, really, or a key moment each, if you will. Saints, I was there, and again, obviously, I appreciate I'm on a Cherries podcast, so so I've got to sort of say, I was there to sort of witness it when they went top of the Premier League. They beat Newcastle, I think it was, away from home on a Friday night to go top of the Premier League. They were there for a little while over that weekend, and being completely honest, they looked a really good outfit. Ralph Hasenhüttl had them really well organised. They were well drilled. They play with a real intensity. He's got the system there that he uses. Things then looked really sort of rosy for Saints, to be honest. They look really good and look really impressive. Since then, their form has dipped. It's been coincided. I mean, they've had rotten injury luck. Cherries obviously last season had a lot of rotten injury luck as well. So it's one of those things, really. But they've had rotten injury luck, really. They've still got, I think it's 5 players out and 1 eligible Minamino on loan for the game of the weekend. So they're still coming over that. There was a time where they had sort of 9-10 players missing around the sort of start of the year. But I mean, they beat Liverpool at St Mary's in January, and they've only beaten Sheffield United since. And that just shows how competitive the Premier League is, really, with regards to if you lose a few key players, it is really difficult. But they've got the talent there in their squad to obviously put together a really good run like they showed at the start of the season. The injuries have hit them, and obviously form's dipped. And I mean, with regards to Cherries, I mean, I look back at it. I did the Barnsley game the other day. Tom was at Swansea, and like you say, that was a really impressive performance. I watched it at home, and I thought, there was a real sort of response and a real reaction shown there. And I think they were very, very impressive against a side that's obviously up there as well. But I did the Barnsley game the other day, and I sort of flip it back to I was at Oakwell when Cherries won there convincingly earlier on in the season to go top of the league, and I think Barnsley were down in 15th or something like that. And it just shows how quickly the Championship can change and how much of a marathon season it is. I mean, I don't think anybody needs me to say how much of a grueling test the Championship is. So it just shows how much form can dip and stuff like that. And I think, I mean, almost the one thing I've taken out of this season covering Cherries is almost every opposition manager, when you look at their quotes ahead of the game, says that it's a Premier League squad and says how talented the squad is and everything like that. And I asked Jonathan Woodgate the other day, about the squad being talented, but they've got to show a bit of grit now in the business end of their season. And he completely agreed. He said, you can have all the talent in the world, but you need to have that desire and that grit. And I think against Swansea, they showed that. So in a nutshell, both sides have got potential to be a lot higher than they are. Both sides have shown in flashes this season how good they can be. But it's also just the consistency that you need to perform at the level that they're at with regards to the Premier League. Obviously, arguably one of the biggest tests in world football, and the Championship, one of the most grueling divisions in the world as well. So that just shows you how tough it is, really, going into the game, which is why the game's so interesting, really, because both sides, it's a cliche to say which side turns up on the day, but both sides can be so good on their day.
Agreed.
It's just so difficult to call, in my opinion. Yeah,
it really is. Well, it's going to be a busy weekend for you at the Echo. I'm absolutely certain. And you know what? The Echo is synonymous with some of the huge moments with the club: Wembley, Winter Gardens, Millennium Stadium, administrations with Neil Perrott, Neil Meldrum, and now with yourself and Tom. Why do you think that print media? It seems to it tends to come into its own, especially for huge match occasions like this. Why do you think that is, and how are the Echo covering it this weekend?
I think there's still, regarding print media, I don't think there's any real way of dressing it up, is in the fact that every print media outlet has had to adapt to the online model over the past 15, 20 years or however long it's been, and you have to offer something different. I mean, I think what a lot of people won't know about myself and Tom is that we grew up in the area reading the Echo.
Yeah.
We are lads from in and around the area who have followed the club's fortunes through reading the Echo. I was very lucky to work with Neil Perrott and with Neil Meldrum initially. Two fantastic writers, two people I learned a lot from. And you look back at the sort of synonymous moments that you mentioned there, and I think everyone with regards to print media will probably have a copy of a lot of those moments at home.
Yeah.
I will still look at it now. It sounds silly, but as a lad from in and around the area, when you're allowed to, not in COVID time, I'll go to see my grandparents and they'll say, I've got your report from such and such here. I'm going to keep hold of it, and stuff like that. And I think there's a real sort of nostalgic feel to the print side of things. And I think that as someone who's grown up, always wanted to do this job, there's something in that I never want to be lost, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, that's right. It's like a souvenir, isn't it? Whereas, you can bookmark a YouTube video, but it's not the same.
Yeah, that is one thing. I mean, I think it's like I said, you have to be really honest and say times changed. I mean, people post-match now, I mean, it's you do a live blog during a game. You want instant reaction after a game. You go on an away game, 9 times out of 10, you'll stop at a service station and there'll be some reporter there filing stuff because it needs to go up on as soon as it can after the whistle. That's just how it is. Some stuff can't wait for Monday's paper and it's got to go out there. But we try our best to ask some questions that will hold for Monday's papers and give it a fresh feel as well and everything like that. And I think with regards to the weekend's game, whichever side gets to Wembley, it will be a special edition that comes out on the Monday. So that will be, something that myself and Tom are very passionate to put together. I'm very excited to put together because it's documenting history around the area that you grow up, and you can't really ask for too much more than that. And like you say, with regards to people like Neil Perrott, Neil Meldrum, everything like that, I mean, I think it's fair to say I learned a lot from them. The industry, since I've been in it, has even changed a lot with the digital age and different bits and pieces like that, even since I've been in it. But there's always that, like I said, that nostalgic feel for newspapers, really. So, yeah, it's something we're extremely proud of, and we'll both be extremely proud to be covering the game for both editions on Saturday.
So if Bournemouth get through to the semis, can we expect a wrap-around cover with lots of celebrations? I mean, obviously not fan celebrations, which has always been, on the wraparounds when you've done that previously. But could we expect something like that if we get through? Because it's a momentous moment.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it is a momentous moment, and it's something. I mean, we will have. I mean, I think a lot of Cherries fans will know the name Richard Crease, the photographer that's
amazing.
Cherries game for the Echo for years. Fantastic photographer, model pro, lovely man, absolutely brilliant photographer. We can't ask for much more than that, and we get in there at the home games, and it's and we're very, very lucky to have him, and he's seen it all. He's seen all the moments that you've seen there, and been there, seen it, and taken all the pictures of it, and sometimes it's quite nice just to chat with him really about times gone by and stuff like that regarding the club and everything like that. Regarding a wraparound, I mean, I'm gonna have to speak to my editor and stuff like that. But I'm sure whatever happens with regards to the game itself, if there is a moment, whichever side gets the momentous occasion, I'm sure there'll be some sort of front page presence, I'd imagine. It's very much something that I'll have to speak to the gaffer about, definitely. Yeah. But it's I mean, it's like I said, really, the previous question, it will certainly be an addition that we'll be very proud to put out, and it's something that both Tom and I will be will be very proud to be there, because I mean, it's in the COVID times and stuff like that, we know how many thousands of people will want to be there, and that's not lost on us. That's not lost on us. We're very lucky to do the job that we do and be able to attend the games. And for me, when it's safe and the environment's right, for it to come back in, fingers crossed, it's not too long now. When fans are able to come back in and share those moments, it will make it even more special, really. Absolutely. And it drives you to really sort of put together a product that people will want to keep and will want to be proud of, really. So that's the sort of main sort of crux of it, really. And yeah, regarding a wraparound, I remember those famous wraparounds and stuff from the promotion to the Premier League and everything like that. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've still got copies of them at home and stuff like that. So yeah, let's wait and see what Saturday brings and see what memories can be made, really.
Yeah, that's right. Well, win, lose, I was about to say or draw, but there's not going to be a draw. So win or lose, make sure you get the Daily Echo, because Tom and Dan do some sterling work in there. Make sure you're supporting your local paper by buying it. But if not, check out bournemouthecho.co.uk and hit the Cherries section, because all their stuff can be seen there. And Dan, thanks so much for coming on Back of the Net, mate. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant to have Dan Rose on there from the Daily Echo, and of course earlier Adam Blackmore from BBC Radio Solent as well, providing a really unique take on what it's like to cover the weekend's game and also their own opinions on the whole rivalry thing. Going to be a cracking one tomorrow. If you haven't seen the video already, check out the card at the top of the screen, as we've got a sibling rivalry in the latest face-off with Adam, a Bournemouth fan, and his brother Daniel, a Saints fan. Yeah, that must be an awkward family dinner, hey? But who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to be a crunch game. We're going to be doing a watch along, of course, so be sure to join us on this channel. The thumbnail will be as the main featured video. Make sure you subscribe and like, of course. But until then, see you next time at the Cherries.